Rev up your engines. Sprinter vans, big giant vans. People are looking for serious big work vans. These things are tall for a reason. It's a serious work van. There's all kinds of room inside these things. Check it out. I mean, they are tall. There's a lot of room in these things. I often tell people to buy a Sprinter van. Not because they're perfect, but because they're the best of what's out there. Now, ages ago, Mercedes-Benz had some pretty indestructible vans, but sometimes the turbos go out on them. They have some problems. They're expensive to fix, right? But you have to look at the overall picture. For one, this is the biggest van that Toyota makes, Sienna minivan, right? They do not sell big vans in the United States. They sell them in the rest of the world. They don't market them in the United States. If you want a big van, you got a choice. You're going to get a Sprinter, or you're going to get a Ford, or you're going to get a Ram. That's pretty much your choices. I wouldn't send a Ram to my worst enemy. They're terrible piles of junk, right? The Fords, they can be okay. The only problem with them is they're Fords. They do have a tendency of breaking down. Now, I have customers that have the Ford large van, and they like them. They're usually businesses. They write them off as a business expense, and generally, anywhere between 100 and 150,000 miles, they get rid of them and get another one. They can afford to, they can amortize the loss on their taxes, and that's where Ford sells a lot of their stuff. Now, nothing's indestructible these days, but compared to what's out there, this has a Mercedes diesel engine, okay? And the engines are excellent. They can last hundreds of thousands of miles. Of course, they're turbocharged because it's a big vehicle. Now, normally I'm not a fan of turbochargers, right? But this is a diesel. Diesels have to be overbuilt because they use compression ignition. They have to be extremely strong. A turbocharger does not do any damage to a diesel engine. They're made for turbochargers. If it was a gasoline engine, it's going to wear out faster. Diesel engines, it's a completely different story. All right, for number one, diesel fuel is kind of a lubricant. It's kind of slimy, right? It lubricates better. So, everything gets more lubrication. Gasoline is kind of caustic. It will eat up bearings, right? The diesel is much better. Now, that's one reason that probably Toyota doesn't sell big vans in the United States. Toyota knows Americans aren't fans of diesels. And if you're going to have a big vehicle, basically, you got to buy a diesel. If you buy a gasoline, you're going to be spending so much money on fuel. The engine's going to wear out faster. It's not made for pulling all that weight. Diesels are made for pulling that weight. Now, when we come to this particular design, like I said, a while back, they're indestructible. But I have seen people buy these 40, 50,000 miles. The turbos went out. They had to put a turbo in them. They do have some problems, but nothing compared to the Ram and Ford giant large vans, right? You want something this tall and this big? This is probably one of the few things that is a decent buy. If I wanted a van, I'd get a Sienna and I'd gut the inside of it, but of course, it doesn't have the height that this Mercedes has. I'm inside it now, and I'm standing up. There's still quite a bit of room. Ventilation fan. This guy's making YouTube videos, traveling around all 50 states. Pull things down, they can sleep in here. They can carry all their camera equipment, everything they need. Got the back seats, because their max is going to be 5 guys. So that's all they need. Now, he bought this thing used, 60-something thousand miles. He paid like $36,000. Not a bad deal. Well, at least doesn't seem to be. He's been driving around about 6,000 miles. But you're going to buy one of these. Got to find a guy like me and do what I'm going to do right now. Hook up my fancy scan tool. And off comes, it automatically knows what it is. We're going to do standalone diagnosis. And as you can see, it's read the VIN, knows what it is. And we'll do a topology. We'll do a full scan. And now as we're waiting, we'll see it's now got 71,000 miles. Not much on one of these. Got the automatic transmission. Got what I like, a nice mechanical emergency brake. So let's start her up. Mercedes diesel starts right up. But what we're going to do is look at all the data. It's a Mercedes, so there's going to be a lot of data. We'll start with the engine. Now you can see the coolant, the engine oil temperature is in the red. I would say it probably needs the coolant temperature sensor and the engine oil sensor, or it's got a wiring problem there because it shouldn't be that low. I'm assuming that's bad data from a bad sensor. So now we'll go back. We'll do a little full load testing. You can see the exhaust back pressure is way too high. That shows you that the catalytic converter is clogging up. Maybe it'll clean out over time, or maybe this one eventually will clog up and will have to be replaced. Check out the fuel system. Okay, the low's working fine. You don't need gauges, right? That's fine pressure. All right, let's check out the high. The high pressure is 327. That's fine. That's one thing I gotta say. With these modern computers like this Autel, you can get all kinds of information without having to get out of the seat. Back in the day, we would have had to take an oxygen sensor off, put a pressure gauge on, measure the back pressure, see if the converter was clogged. This does it right with the push of a button. We can go to the control unit. We can see all the outputs of the CAN signals. Now here's an anomaly. We're in the control unit. It says that the odometer reading is 15,590 kilometers, but the odometer says 71,823 miles. So I'm assuming the control unit's been replaced, and it was replaced 15,000 kilometers ago, which is what, I don't know, 8,000 miles or something. You bought it secondhand, so you really don't know the history. So it seems to me that the control unit has been replaced. It runs fine, but something to put in your head. The odometer reading here should be the same. Normally, people will cheat and the odometer in the car will say lower mileage. In this case, it's the opposite. So I'm assuming the control unit had been replaced at some point in time, and that wouldn't have been a cheap job. Like I say, the quality of these things isn't as great as it was ages ago. As you can see with my fancy Autel scanner, a lot of stuff can be done on these. Low speed tests, high speed tests, just sitting in the driver's seat. These things used to be impossible to work on. They aren't anymore to a guy like me that's got a machine like that Autel. And there's plenty of guys that know how to operate those things. These cars are now more workable than they were in the past. Back in the day, before OBD scanners, you had to know these things. You had to have all kinds of special test equipment. Now, you can get a computer that does many of the tests. And you don't need to buy all that stuff. So they're a lot easier to work on than they used to be, because the knowledge is shared to companies like Autel that get a machine, that explain everything pretty layman's terms. And that machine I was just showing you, you can use it as a freeze frame oscilloscope. You can do all kinds of testing with it, and the machine will even tell you how to use the test. But there's no backup camera. I would have put a backup camera on it. So here we go. I gotta say, smooth ride. Little bitty diesel engine, but hey, it does have the turbo. Step on the gas. Makes a lot of noise. It does accelerate somewhat. Oh, we're cornering. Hey. Yeah, it's a big van. It's high up in the air. You have to realize that. They've hit things with this. You got to really watch. It actually drives more like a car than a van for something this size. I don't feel like I'm driving something that is as big as it actually is. So you got to be careful on underpasses and going in garages. So a little drag strap, I don't think it's going to do too good, but this isn't about racing. This is about getting you where you're going and your equipment. Nobody's behind us. We're coming to a stop, and here comes the drag strip. Go! It's not exactly pulling the wheels off. Oh, it's in second. It's in third. We're barely moving. It redlines at 4,200 RPM. It's not a race van. Being a diesel, you can haul a lot of stuff, you can pull a lot of stuff, but you're not going to be doing any drag racing. The turbo keeps it chugging along, and like I said, unlike a gasoline car, turbochargers are perfectly fine on diesels. Diesel's more of a lubricant. They go at lower RPMs. The engines have so much pressure because they do pressure ignition and not spark plug fired ignition. They're so strong the turbos don't really hurt them. It's a much better ride than the Fords and the Rams for sure. Got a better suspension. Now this is a conventional van. It's two-wheel drive. It's not all-wheel drive, but let's face it, it's a work van. You're not taking this thing rock crawling unless you're insane. He was thinking about buying a new one. That was over 6 figures. That was over 100 grand. He paid $36,000 for this. See, it's in pretty good shape, other than the catalytic converter starting to get clogged up a little. Maybe the previous owner didn't put enough depth fluid. Who knows? He is in Texas, so he has to pass the emissions living in Houston, Texas. If he was here in Tennessee, you could just take the catalytic converter off. Nobody cares. They don't inspect them here, and then you wouldn't even have to think about it. But that's the only thing that I can really see that's wrong with the thing. Otherwise, it runs fine. It's a diesel. It's going to get a lot better gas mileage for a big van than a gasoline engine. And for $36,000, it looks like a wise move buying it used instead of brand new. And he did buy it from the original owner. So it isn't some, he's the 10th owner. So you're looking for a giant, tall work van? I still have to say it's probably the best choice out of what's there. If you live in Asia, yeah, get a Toyota, but they don't import them into the United States. I never advise buying a car in one country and importing where they don't sell them, because then getting parts and getting them fixed is a pain in the butt. They've been selling these for years. As I showed you with my equipment, guys like me know how to work on them. They can get all the information with a nice scan tool. A good, large van. He's going to go to all 50 states for his YouTube channel. biofilm and stuff, he probably won't have anything at all as long as he changes the oil every 10,000 miles and keeps putting that depth fluid in to make sure it's not going to clog up his cat anymore. Maybe the stuff he's using now will clean it out and it'll be less clogged. But realize that at some point in time it may need a catalytic converter. That's why if you get one, always keep the depth fluid full. Otherwise, when you buy a catalytic converter, you wish you put a bunch of those cheaper jugs in than a $2,500 plus labor converter. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.